What if I told you that deep inside your blood vessels right now there is a molecule so powerful, so extraordinary, so breathtakingly intelligent that it can literally stop inflammation in its tracks, reverse the biological clock ticking inside your cells, protect your heart, sharpen your brain, and restore the energy you thought you had permanently lost? And what if I told you that this molecule already exists inside your body, waiting, dormant, neglected, simply because nobody ever taught you how to wake it up? What if the fatigue you feel every morning, the joint pain that greets you before you even stand up, the brain fog that steals your sharpest hours, the slow decline you have quietly accepted as just getting older? What if none of that was inevitable? What if aging as we know it was not a sentence but a symptom of one single deficiency that modern science has now cracked open like a door flooded with light? That molecule is nitric oxide. And today, everything you thought you knew about inflammation, about aging, about what your body is truly capable of is about to change forever. Stay with me because what comes next will genuinely transform how you live. What if the most powerful medicine on this planet was never in a bottle, never behind a pharmacy counter, never attached to a prescription that costs you hundreds of dollars every single month, but instead was already living inside you, produced by your own body, encoded in your own biology, designed by millions of years of human evolution specifically to keep you healthy, vibrant, protected, and alive with extraordinary energy? What if the reason so many people are sick, inflamed, exhausted, and aging far faster than they should be is not bad luck, not weak genetics, not the simple passage of time, but the silent, invisible collapse of one single molecular system that almost nobody is talking about? That molecule is nitric oxide, and I need you to understand something from the very first moment of this conversation. Nitric oxide is not a supplement trend, not a gym culture buzzword, not something invented in a laboratory 2 decades ago. It is a biological truth so profound, so deeply woven into the fabric of human health, that three scientists won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1998 specifically for discovering how it works inside the human body. Three Nobel laureates, because that is how significant this molecule truly is. So let us begin at the very foundation, because understanding nitric oxide means understanding something about your body that most people will go their entire lives never knowing. Your body is made up of approximately 37 trillion cells. Those cells need oxygen, nutrients, and communication. They need signals that tell them what to do, when to protect themselves, when to relax, when to fight, and when to repair. Nitric oxide is one of the most critical of those signals. It is produced primarily in the inner lining of your blood vessels, a single whisper-thin layer of cells called the endothelium. And when it is working correctly, it does something almost miraculous. It causes your blood vessels to dilate, to open wide and flexible, allowing blood to flow freely and efficiently to every single organ, tissue, and cell in your body. It reduces the stickiness of your blood. It prevents dangerous clots from forming. It tells your immune system when to stand down from unnecessary inflammatory attacks. And it sends protective signals directly into the nucleus of your cells, influencing how your genes express themselves, essentially telling your DNA whether to age gracefully or collapse under pressure. Now, here is where the story becomes deeply personal for every single person listening to this. Around the age of 40, and for some people even earlier, depending on their diet, their stress levels, their sleep quality, and their lifestyle, your body's ability to produce nitric oxide begins to fall off a cliff. By the time most people reach their 40s and 50s, their nitric oxide levels have dropped by nearly 50% compared to their younger years. By their 60s and 70s, the decline is even more dramatic. And what happens when nitric oxide disappears from your biological system? Your blood vessels become stiff, narrow, and rigid. Your blood pressure climbs, your circulation weakens, your cells stop receiving adequate oxygen and nutrients, your immune system loses its ability to distinguish between real threats and harmless internal signals. And so it begins attacking everything constantly, chronically, without pause. That chronic, unrelenting, low-level immune assault on your own tissues is what scientists now call inflammaging, a combination of the words inflammation and aging, and it is now recognized by the world's leading biomedical researchers as the single unifying root cause behind the most devastating diseases of our time: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, chronic kidney disease, metabolic syndrome, autoimmune conditions, even certain forms of cancer. These are not separate, isolated diseases with separate, isolated causes. They are all connected by one common thread: chronic inflammation running wild through a body that has lost its ability to produce enough nitric oxide to keep it under control. This is not a fringe theory. This is the scientific consensus emerging from thousands of peer-reviewed studies conducted at the world's most prestigious medical institutions. And once you understand this connection, once you truly grasp that inflammation is not your enemy, but rather a fire alarm going off in a building where the sprinkler system has stopped working, everything about how you approach your health changes completely. So the question that matters most right now is this: how do you fix it? How do you restore what time, stress, poor diet, and modern living have stolen from your body? How do you reignite your nitric oxide production and give your endothelium, that precious inner lining of your blood vessels, the raw materials it needs to begin producing this life-changing molecule again? And the answer is so accessible, so practical, so beautifully rooted in the natural world that it might surprise you with its simplicity. The first and most powerful place to begin is with food, because nature, in its extraordinary intelligence, has placed nitric oxide boosting compounds in some of the most common, delicious, and widely available foods on Earth. Dietary nitrates, found in remarkable concentrations in dark leafy greens like spinach, arugula, Swiss chard, and particularly in beetroot, are converted by your body into nitric oxide through a beautifully elegant two-step process. First, beneficial bacteria in your mouth, specifically on the surface of your tongue, convert dietary nitrates into nitrites. Then, your stomach acid and your own body chemistry convert those nitrites into active, powerful nitric oxide that enters your bloodstream, reaches your endothelial cells, and triggers that cascade of protective, anti-inflammatory, vascular opening effects. This means that something as simple and affordable as eating a small bowl of arugula salad, drinking a glass of fresh beetroot juice, or adding spinach to your morning smoothie is literally, not metaphorically, but literally, a biological intervention that changes the chemistry of your blood vessels within hours of consumption. But the dietary pathway is only one part of the story, and I want you to understand the full picture because each piece builds upon the others in a way that is deeply empowering. Pomegranate is another extraordinary food in this conversation, not just because of its nitrate content, but because of its unique polyphenol compounds, particularly punicalagins, which protect your endothelial cells from oxidative damage, preserve the nitric oxide you produce, and prevent it from being destroyed before it can do its work. Dark chocolate, specifically cacao with a high percentage of flavonoids, has been shown in rigorous clinical studies to enhance endothelial function and increase nitric oxide bioavailability. Walnuts contain the amino acid L-arginine, which is one of the primary building blocks your body uses to synthesize nitric oxide through the enzymatic pathway involving nitric oxide synthase. Garlic, particularly aged black garlic, activates the very same enzymatic pathway and has demonstrated measurable improvements in blood vessel flexibility in human clinical trials. Now, I want to address something that is often completely overlooked in mainstream health conversations about nitric oxide, and it involves one of the most fascinating and important scientific discoveries of the past 2 decades: the role of your gut microbiome. Your intestinal ecosystem, that vast and complex community of trillions of microorganisms living in your digestive tract, is not just involved in digesting food and producing vitamins. It is directly, actively, profoundly involved in your body's nitric oxide production. Specific strains of beneficial gut bacteria, including species of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, produce enzymes and metabolites that support the nitrite-nitrite-nitric oxide conversion pathway. They produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate that protect and nourish your endothelial cells. And they regulate the inflammatory signals coming from your immune system in ways that either support or undermine your nitric oxide production at every level. This means that everything you do to support your gut microbiome, eating diverse plant foods, consuming fermented foods like yogurt, kimchi, kefir, and miso, avoiding unnecessary antibiotics, reducing processed sugar that feeds harmful bacterial populations, is simultaneously an intervention for your nitric oxide system and therefore for your inflammation levels and your aging trajectory. The connection between gut health and vascular health, between your digestive ecosystem and your biological age, is one of the most exciting frontiers in all of modern medicine. And the practical implication is stunning in its simplicity. A healthy gut is an anti inflammatory gut, and an anti inflammatory gut is a gut that helps your blood vessels stay young. Now, let us talk about movement, because physical activity is not just about burning calories or building muscle. It is one of the most powerful nitric oxide stimulating interventions available to any human being, completely free of charge, accessible to people of virtually every age and fitness level. When you move your body, when your heart beats faster, when blood flows more rapidly through your vessels, that increased blood flow creates something called shear stress on the walls of your blood vessels. The endothelial cells lining those vessels sense this mechanical force, and they respond by activating an enzyme called endothelial nitric oxide synthase, or ENOS, which produces nitric oxide directly from the amino acid L-arginine. This is your body's most direct internal manufacturing process for nitric oxide, and aerobic exercise is one of the most reliable ways to activate it. Walking briskly, cycling, swimming, dancing, even gentle yoga that elevates your heart rate. All of these create shear stress, all of these activate ENOS, all of these stimulate your endothelium to produce more of this protective, rejuvenating, inflammation-fighting molecule. There is also the matter of how you breathe, which I find one of the most fascinating intersections of ancient wisdom and modern science. Nasal breathing, breathing through your nose rather than your mouth, matters enormously for nitric oxide production. Your nasal passages and sinuses are actually significant producers of nitric oxide, and when you breathe nasally, you inhale this nitric oxide directly into your lungs, where it reaches your pulmonary blood vessels and exerts powerful dilating and anti-inflammatory effects. Mouth breathing, which has become extraordinarily common in modern populations due to stress, poor sleep posture, and chronic nasal congestion, bypasses this entire production system. Simply learning to breathe through your nose during rest, during light exercise, during sleep, is a genuine physiological intervention that supports nitric oxide levels in a way that costs absolutely nothing and requires only awareness and practice. Sleep deserves its own dedicated place in this conversation because what happens in your body during deep restorative sleep is nothing short of miraculous and deeply connected to your nitric oxide system. During the deepest stages of sleep, your body undergoes its most intensive cellular repair processes. Your endothelial cells regenerate. Your nitric oxide synthase enzymes are reset and restored. Your inflammatory cytokines, those chemical messengers that drive chronic inflammation, are cleared and regulated by your glymphatic system and your immune network. When sleep is disrupted, shortened, or chronically poor in quality, this entire restoration process fails. Inflammatory markers rise, endothelial function deteriorates, nitric oxide production drops, and you wake up not restored but depleted, beginning each day with a biological deficit that accumulates week after week, month after month, year after year into accelerated aging and increased disease risk. Protecting your sleep is therefore not a lifestyle luxury. It is a fundamental act of biological maintenance that directly determines the health of your nitric oxide system and therefore the rate at which you age. Stress, particularly chronic psychological stress, is one of the most devastating suppressors of nitric oxide production that exists. And I want to spend a moment here because this is something that gets tragically underestimated in most health conversations. When you experience stress, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline. These stress hormones are extraordinarily useful in genuine emergency situations. They prepare your body to fight or flee by redirecting blood flow, elevating heart rate, and triggering inflammation as a protective immune response. But when stress becomes chronic, when cortisol is elevated not for minutes but for months and years, it directly suppresses the activity of endothelial nitric oxide synthase. It causes your blood vessels to constrict. It drives systemic inflammation. It accelerates the biological aging of your cells in a measurable, documented way. The telomeres, protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes that determine how many more times a cell can safely divide, literally shorten faster under chronic stress. This is not metaphorical. Chronic stress is a biological aging accelerator, and its primary mechanism runs directly through the suppression of your nitric oxide system. Mindfulness practices, breath work, time in nature, genuine human connection, creative expression. These are not soft self care suggestions. They are hard, science backed biological interventions that protect your endothelium and preserve your nitric oxide production. And then there is sun exposure, another area where modern society has, in many ways, overcorrected out of fear in ways that may actually be harming health. Sunlight, specifically ultraviolet A radiation reaching your skin, triggers the release of nitric oxide stores held in the upper layers of your skin into your bloodstream. This is a different pool of nitric oxide from what your endothelial cells produce, and it creates rapid, measurable improvements in blood pressure and vascular tone within minutes of sun exposure. Populations who live closer to the equator and receive more consistent sun exposure show lower rates of cardiovascular disease. And while many factors contribute to this, the nitric oxide releasing effect of sunlight on skin tissue is now considered a significant contributor. This does not mean reckless, unprotected burning in intense midday sun. It means understanding that moderate, sensible, regular sun exposure is genuinely health protective, that your skin is not just a barrier, but an active endocrine and signaling organ that participates meaningfully in your body's anti-aging chemistry. I also want to address one of the most important and often neglected aspects of this entire conversation, which is the profound connection between your oral health and your nitric oxide system. Because remember the two-step process I described earlier: dietary nitrates being converted to nitrites by bacteria in your mouth before your body converts them to nitric oxide? That process depends entirely on having a healthy, diverse population of beneficial bacteria living on your tongue and in your oral cavity. When you use antibacterial mouthwash, particularly the strong alcohol-based commercial varieties that destroy virtually all bacteria in your mouth without discrimination, you are not just killing harmful bacteria, you are destroying the very bacterial community that your body depends on to initiate the nitric oxide production pathway from your diet. Multiple studies have now shown that regular use of antibacterial mouthwash is associated with measurably reduced nitric oxide production and increased blood pressure. This single piece of information has the potential to change a daily habit that millions of people perform every morning with the sincere belief that they are protecting their health, when the science now suggests they may be inadvertently undermining one of their body's most important protective systems. What I want you to take from everything we have covered today is not a feeling of overwhelm, but a feeling of profound possibility. Because the path back to robust nitric oxide production, to controlled inflammation, to genuine biological rejuvenation, it is not paved with exotic pharmaceuticals, extreme interventions, or unaffordable technologies. It is paved with dark leafy greens and beets and pomegranate. It is paved with daily movement that gets your heart beating and your blood flowing. It is paved with nasal breathing and restorative sleep and the courageous, consistent management of chronic stress. It is paved with protecting your gut microbiome and your oral microbiome, those communities of invisible living organisms that are, in the most literal sense, your partners in health. It is paved with moderate sun exposure and the simple act of choosing whole, unprocessed, plant-rich foods more often than the ultra-processed alternatives that currently dominate modern food environments. Your endothelium, that thin, remarkable, living inner lining of your blood vessels, is one of the most important organs in your body, and it is regenerative. It responds. It listens to every message you send it through your food choices, your movement patterns, your breathing, your sleep, your stress levels, and your relationship with the natural world. When you send it the right messages consistently and with genuine commitment, it responds by producing more nitric oxide. And when nitric oxide rises, inflammation falls. When inflammation falls, your cells stop aging at an accelerated rate. When cellular aging slows, the diseases we associate with growing old, the heart disease, the diabetes, the cognitive decline, the chronic pain, the fatigue, lose their grip. They lose their power. And you begin to experience something that modern medicine has rarely been able to promise: not just the absence of disease, but the genuine, vibrant, energetic, engaged presence of true health. The science is clear, the pathway is visible, and the power has always been yours. Nitric oxide is not a mystery anymore. It is a biological lever that you hold in your hands every single day through the choices you make about what you eat, how you move, how you breathe, how you sleep, and how you respond to the world around you. Inflammation is not your destiny. Accelerated aging is not your sentence. The body you live in is far more capable of renewal, of restoration, and of resilience than most people have ever been told. Every meal you eat mindfully, every breath you take through your nose, every walk you take in the morning light, every hour of deep sleep you protect, every moment of genuine rest you allow yourself. These are not small things. They are acts of biological transformation. They are investments in a future version of yourself that is healthier, sharper, more energetic, and more fully alive than the version that woke up this morning unaware of what was possible. The knowledge you carry now is genuinely powerful. Use it with consistency, share it with the people you love, and trust in the extraordinary, intelligent, self healing nature of the human body you were given. The journey to ending inflammation and reversing aging begins not tomorrow, not after the next blood test, not when conditions are perfect. It begins with your very next choice.